Teresa, what's your last name? And how many years experience do you have now in solar? Thirteen. 14th year. No, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, Jen, I might ask you to talk just very briefly about some of the engineering and layout work you're doing. Stormwater, geotech, because people have seen the geotech machines. Yeah, you've been doing geotech. You did a transportation study, you provided the drawing for the road use agreements. Worked on the design, the layout, taking into consideration the constraints.
And there's one. Okay, it's 6:30. I'd like to welcome you all to our information session for Flint Mine. Thank you for coming. For those who are on Zoom, I am going to have to try to figure out how to let you raise your hand. So we're working on both of that. There's a smiley face or something that's unmuted for a question. Let me know. Other housekeeping, I was told the bathrooms, the men's room is to the left and the women's room is to the right. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm April Ernst, the new executive director of the Greene County IDA. Today we have Patrick Doyle with us from Flint Mine Solar and Renee Van Schack, our former executive director. So just a little preview, an overview of our process with the IDA. Currently, we are just reviewing the application. We've hired analysis to be done by an outside firm, a solar valuation firm. And then we'll be doing other research, and we produce something called a finding statement. Currently, if you look online on our website, Greene, Grene, IDA.com, we have several finding statements. So if you look to the left, there's all our new projects. Freepoint Solar is one that you could compare to this project. So there's information there for you. So we're currently reviewing the application. We'd like to point out Flint Mine has negotiated a few things with local jurisdictions, and we will be working those into our documents. So I'm gonna let Patrick take over the podium just so that he can explain a little bit more about the project and the overview of those points. Okay.
Thank you to April and to Renee. I'm Patrick Doyle from Flint Mine Solar. And we have a handout here that will be posted on the IDA website, but I'm just going to briefly go through it. I would like to welcome the crew from Crawford Associates here. One Coxsackie resident and two Columbia County residents. So I understand that's close enough. But we've tried to use certainly New York-based consultants, and if at all possible, consultants that are in the Capital District or Greene County or Columbia County. And we're very happy to have Crawford Associates been working with us for 4 years. And I'd like to congratulate them on 30 years of their firm's existence. Crawford have done a lot of the civil work, transportation, geotech. So anyway, my colleagues Bill Moore and Rob Panashi are online. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here because we are going through a global pandemic and everyone gets their turn. So this project is being developed by a partnership of Hudson Energy, which is mainly Bill Moore and myself. And we've been working in renewable energy in New York for more than 20 years. And we have partnered with Amber Infrastructure, which is a UK-based infrastructure firm, active in solar and wind, offshore wind, and that is owned by Hunt, owned 70% by Hunt Companies, which is a US firm involved in solar projects, military housing, and who also have an affiliate who constructs solar projects. So the proposed facility, as many people know, is a utility scale solar facility proposed for the towns of Coxsackie and Athens here in Greene County. 100 megawatts of AC solar capacity, capable of producing clean, renewable, homemade energy right here. And to give people a sense of how much energy it will produce, we expect it will produce more than enough for every home in Greene County on an annual basis. And all the electricity will be sold into the New York market. We also expect during construction to be hundreds of well-paying jobs. And importantly, this project was subject to certification by the New York State Energy Siting Board in accordance with Article 10. And that certification came in August the 4th of this year. The project will be sited on 400 acres, approximately 400 acres, out of approximately 1,500 acres that we have options to purchase or to lease. We have factored in setbacks from property lines and roadways. And very importantly, from the very beginning here was screening the site. I'm sure there are people who love solar projects, but there are also people who would prefer not to see every roadway planted with solar panels. So quite important has been, first of all, choosing a site that was well screened, either by ridges or trees, or a site that we could, where if it wasn't screened, by existing trees and ridges, we could plant shrubs and trees to help with the screening. Of course, as everyone knows, there are a number of transmission lines going through this area. And so the open land and access to transmission is clearly important, as well as the ability to comply with the environmental requirements. The requirements, when I say environmental requirements, I mean the natural environment and the people. And we found here, landowners that were interested in, for the most part, keeping their houses and a field 10 acres or 20 acres or 40 acres right beside their house, but they had land behind the house, behind the yard, that simply wasn't being used productively. And so I think this is a very good match. This land is well suited to solar and really hasn't been that suited to farming since family farms started to go out of favor in the last 50 or 60 years. We were required to have 50, 60 acres of raptor habitat. We're actually doing 297 acres along Flint Mine Road. And when we started, we actually saw Flint Mine Road as being our project. That's that's what we call the project, but we're actually leaving that area north and south of Flint Mine Road for the Raptors. And we've worked with Greenland Trust and Scenic Hudson on this, and expect that we'll probably work more with those entities in the future. So to talk about where we are, met some of you at our open houses in February 2018, and actually we started our public involvement in February 18. We had an open house in May 2018, and then we had a second open house in November of 2018. After that, we went through scoping and stipulations where the public had a chance to tell us, the public and the agencies had a chance to tell Flint Mine what they would like to be studied, and we all agreed on what the scope should be, leading us to submit our application just after COVID started in May 2020, having it accepted as complete in August 2020, and then we got our certification 1 year later. I think it's important to point out that in the process, we submitted a proposed application, and in the process, we got feedback, strong feedback from the New York State DEC, and made significant changes to the layout that really reduced very significantly the DEC wetland impacts. So where are we at now? We got our certification in August 2021, and we are going through the post-certification compliance process. So for example, we are working on the visual plan. Where we put plantings, where we have screenings. We have that 30% complete and are working towards 60% and then finalizing it. I'm actually going to have Jennifer Crawford from our engineer talk a little bit about some of the civil work we're doing.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. We're keeping pretty busy over at Crawford and Associates. And so we, have been working to refine the layout based on the different environmental constraints in the settlement layout. But we're also working on geotechnical work. Teresa's been out in the field quite a bit lately, doing some test pits. We've been working on finalizing the road use agreement with the county and the towns. We've been doing some stormwater sampling, as we had discussed originally with the Sleepy Hollow Lake stakeholders. We've got DOT applications and National Grid crossing applications being prepared. And then also active in working on the civil design of the National Grid switchyard and the facility substations. Been working with National Grid on all of that. So that's just a selection of some of the things that we're keeping busy with to, finalize the design of the project and submit the compliance filings.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
So Jen mentioned subdivisions, and I think I like the fact that our landowners are keeping their homes on 10 or 40 acres, but it does mean that we have to divide their existing property into the home and the neighboring fields, and then the rest of the land in the back that the Flint Mine would own. We actually purchased our first parcel in Athens a couple of years ago, and we're about to close on our second parcel. So we're going through this in a sequence, but the subdivision process is important. I think we've done 2 in Athens and 4 in Coxsackie, and then we have a number of additional subdivisions to do this year, especially in Coxsackie. As Jennifer mentioned, we have submitted road use agreements as required as one of our post-compliance requirements. We submitted road use agreements with Greene County, with both towns, Athens and Coxsackie. We've been negotiating host community agreements with Athens and Coxsackie, and part of what we proposed is to pay each town $200,000 a year every year. So I think that's in my opinion, quite a generous offer to the towns, and we're hoping to conclude agreements with the towns this quarter. So I mentioned earlier, and it's in the presentation, the layout that we have has really changed quite a lot from the first one we proposed at the first open house in 2018. And this is not just based on feedback from the DEC and state agencies, but we happened to be just behind another project in town. And so I had the benefit of attending many, especially in Coxsackie, attending many town board meetings, and got to hear a lot from the community about what they liked and what they didn't like. And we did our best to factor in that feedback into our layout. So it's not just what the agencies have said, it's also what we heard here locally. One thing that was important was, to the extent possible, to leave our project back from the roads and to screen it. So I talked about, one of the important thing is the screening, and so we're in process with that. The other, I think, a pretty important thing that we're doing, and it reminds me that our very, very, very first meeting on this project was with a gentleman by the name of Rene Van Schack, who has been involved in projects in this area. A couple of projects, Rene? Yeah, a few projects. And gave us really good feedback on what was important to the community. And one of them was the Flint Mine Hill, that was an area that the community saw was important to preserve. And so we were able to arrange for the ownership of that hill to be transferred from the Southwold Museum in Long Island, who I think had been good stewards but wanted to, I guess, move on, to the Archaeological Conservancy, who has, I think, about 80 of these kind of sites. And so we hope that not only will that site be preserved, but also, for people in the community who want to study it, or not camp there, but to study it, that it will be open under the right circumstances. So that's already been done, transferred. In construction, I do think that solar panels are a good match for this. To install solar panels requires fairly minimal disturbance to the soil. Unlike, for example, wind turbines, which I also love. But wind turbines are much bigger and require much bigger foundation and heavier roads than solar. So solar has relatively minimal ground disturbance. We do plan to raise the panels 4 feet off the ground so that we need to mow the grass less frequently. Crawford here has come up with a way of having pervious gravel access roads. You didn't invent it? Okay. And then the DC electrical cables will be suspended on racking. And especially in the archaeologically sensitive area, we will, within the fences, we will route the AC cables along above ground. And yeah. And then finally, I think something, at least finally on the permitting front, something that's always very important to communities is decommissioning. And that's something that the state siting board has been all over. So we will post a letter of credit that will cover the cost of decommissioning, and that calculation will be redone fairly frequently. I think it's every 5 years after being done just after construction. So, one group that in New York that I think doesn't get the credit it deserves are the owners of the land, who have across the state really taken fantastic care of this land. And so this project, I think, will give the landowners here a chance to reap the rewards of their decades of stewardship that has preserved the area's rural character and open space. And so we expect to inject approximately $10 million plus into the community in short order. As mentioned, we expect hundreds of construction jobs over what would probably be an 18-month construction period. The project itself will involve an investment of $200 million plus solar modules, racking systems, inverters, transformers, breakers, and also some locally sourced labor and materials. And then we also expect, as a result of our application, to be making tens of millions of dollars into the project over its operating life. And of course, the main purpose of such a project is to produce clean, homemade energy, sustainable homemade energy. So in summary, we think that Flint Mine Solar will contribute to the well-being of Coxsackie and Athens landowners, to the towns, their libraries, fire departments, Greene County and the Coxsackie Athens school districts that are always under budget pressure, and will serve to enhance sustainability and mitigate climate change. So I know the plan is to take comments and questions and then respond in time. So I'll hand this back to the IDA.
Okay, so for those of us who joined us late, oh, another one coming. Okay. So I'm going to attempt to unmute everybody. And if you have a comment or question, just state your name and wait to be recognized, and then we'll go in order. So technical questions can be emailed to me. Okay, so technical questions can be emailed to Patrick Doyle. I will get that contact information out. Other questions or comments can also be emailed to info@greenida.com. The presentation that Patrick just presented is going to be posted to our website under their page, Flint Mine Solar. And then we'll open up questions and comments. So can we unmute everybody? Does anybody in the audience here have any comments, questions? We're good? Nothing? Okay. Okay, it looks like you have to unmute on your side if you'd like to ask a question. Do you have anybody who wants to comment? Reaction or unmuting mic? I think we're good. Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. No, we're good. Okay, and then I'll close the meeting. Sure. Okay, so once we do our research, we get out the finding statement, we'll be posting documents to our website. We will be having a formal public hearing, and all that information can be found at our website also at greenida.com. Yep, everything's, the documents that we have already are online, just the one. Okay, thank you.